Good afternoon. Sorry for the delay. I've been a little bit sick. Um, this is Ben Zandarski. This project serves as a prototype for the front end portion of a real time sensor network that tracks the condition of hearth features across several archaeological sites. The result is a leaflet web map that continuously reports incoming sensor data. For the purposes of this prototype, the sensor data was previously collected and saved to a JSON file. I wanted to focus on just the front end portion of the map and the things that we covered in class. To accomplish this task, I used a tool called Node-RED, which was created by IBM and later released to the open source community under the Apache 2.0 license. To get Node-RED, you're going to need a couple things. You would need Node.js. And if you're not familiar with that, I'll post a link. You will also need the Node Package Manager. And then, of course, you'll need Node-RED, which is a programming tool for wiring together hardware devices, APIs, and online services in new, interesting ways. It's basically a low-code way to work with interface with all these sensors. Once you get Node-RED downloaded, you just go to the command line and type in Node-RED, and then you open the browser, and Node-RED works on port 1880. So you go to localhost colon 1880, and you'll get the Node-RED interface. You can see in the Node-RED interface, we have a couple things on the left. These are the nodes. These allow you to do a number of things, such as debug, add functions, work with spreadsheets, different inputs, sequences, parsers for CSV, HTML, JSON, add file storage, email. There are numerous nodes, and you can also add more nodes by going to the palette or using npm install. To really understand this, the best way is to get started. So typically, you would have your sensors connected, and if you're using a Raspberry Pi, there are already nodes in the Raspberry Pi built in to allow you to work with it. Here, I'm just on my laptop, so. And then you would work with usually MQTT, which is a pub/sub messaging protocol. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to inject a timestamp. So that's all this is. If I double click it, you can see over here, the payload is a timestamp. This basically gets everything started. The next thing I do, run a wire from here to here to get the sensor data that I had previously collected. Here I just put the file where the sensor data is, the output, the encoding, right? This is the sensor data, so you can see sensor. It's a JSON file, and it's made up of various sensors. Sensor 2, right? It also reports time, soil moisture, smoke, name, longitude, latitude, an infrared sensor to detect if there's any animal disturbance near the hearth. This detects the moisture of the soil near the hearth. If there's smoke or fire. Okay. And then, so I inject the timestamp. This collects the data. So basically what I have now is the timestamp and all of that data. Now I add another node here to get that, to convert that data to a JavaScript object. When you do that, and this is the part I struggled with, typically it creates a, as you can see here, we have an array of sensor data. Typically you would use a for in loop to access that array, but Node-RED works a little bit differently. This part really gave me some trouble figuring this out. you basically split that payload up into separate messages. Now, since my payload is sensor, if I do split once, it just says sensor and then it still puts the array in there. What I want is to get separate messages with this JSON data. So then I split it again. And that gives me just the data that I want. Then I added a switch node. What this does is allow me to create a switch based on a certain criteria. So here, I created a switch for each sensor. In doing that, I can run each sensor into a different function. These functions are basically the same. The difference is I changed the icon color for each sensor. Here you can see I return the payload. The reason I'm doing this is because the map that I'm ultimately going to create requires the data to be in this format. And it also allows me to add the icon color, and to keep the pop-up box open. For the icons, I use Font Awesome. So Node-RED supports all of the Font Awesome icons, which is pretty neat. I haven't really used them a lot, so and you can also change the color. And you can see here, yellow, etc., etc. I put a delay on just for the purposes of slowing the messages down. If you inject this, you get them all at once without the delay. So this allows you to kind of see what it would look like with the sensors actually running. And then here you can see this runs to a payload. This is basically the debug node. So everything will show up when I actually inject this and start running this. It'll show up over here in the right pane. I've also connected this to a switch, and you can see the switch is payload.fire equals 1. So the only payload that comes out of this is where fire equals 1. And I've also added a geofence. And it's as simple as just drawing your geofence, saying either points inside or points outside. So this will only collect point sensor data where the payload of fire equals 1 and is within the geofence. And then that will send that to the map. It will also send out an email alert to me letting me know that there's a fire in a certain area. In order to run this, we need to deploy it. So if I click deploy, it says successfully deployed. And then I need to inject the timestamp to get the flow going. So I inject the timestamp, and you can see here all of my sensor data is being loaded. Now, if you look at the map node, you can see I used OpenStreetMap grayscale. I set the start point and the zoom, the age that each point, how long each point lives, and the web path, which is just world map. So to access that map, you just go to the world map, and you can see here I have the sensor data running. You can see now it's reporting sensor 2. With the infrared is 0, so no animal disturbance, fire 0, soil moisture is within range, and there's a little bit of smoke. And then it tells me the lat long. From here, I can change the base map to whatever I'd like, add different layers. I can zoom, measure. This also allows me to alter the parameters while the map is running. And you can see to get to the map, it's localhost 1880 world map. And I'm still collecting data from sensor 2. And now we're looking at sensor 3. So while this is going on, there might have been a fire. So if I check my email, let's give this a second. We can see that we have messages from Node-RED. This just basically gives me the payload and lets me know that there's a fire. So I can call fire and they can respond to the fire in the area. Okay. So we can see from the Node-RED window, we're still loading sensor data in the debug. And that's it.